everybody. So I'm Ian Layton. I saw Justin taking a picture of himself every day with this app, so decided to do it for No Shave November, which explains that. I actually took the exact same classes as Cole for the, well, okay, so first video. So what I really want to show you in this is actually this, because there were a ton of those pictures. I'm on transit, or first one I'm on Muni, then BART, I'm biking, on a bus, in a car, on a plane. So transit's like a huge part of pretty much everybody's life. You know, no matter what mode you take, you have to move around. I love alternative transportation. I call this a windshield, well, it's called a behind the windshield bias, so I wish it was just called transportation, non-automobile modes. I'm gonna go over the classes in the beginning because my presentation is gonna be really kind of mixed up. These are the classes I took for historical and modern city, a couple historical overviews, and then a couple kind of more technical civil engineering classes. And these are the human-centered design classes I took, which are same as Cole's, so hopefully my kind of overview will be a little bit different. Okay, so Act 1, the problem of cities. How did people get around before cars? Well, we'll look at the city. So first, okay, so this is a pretty famous video from 1905 or 1906. It was taken, I think, 4 days before the earthquake. It shows kind of all the life that was on Market Street. There's people, bikes, cars, streetcars, horse-drawn carriages. Apparently, they actually paid people to drive around, so San Francisco looked like a modern city. So it looks like there are more cars than there actually were. So the thing is, though, that the rest of the city, a lot of times you had, Jacob Reese took a lot of pictures in New York, you had the issue of crowding, lack of infrastructure, epidemics, there was a lot of immigration, social unrest. So there was this growing movement to bring parks into cities, and Central Park was the Great Park Experiment. This was said to do as many things as cure alcoholism, or at least create an environment for physical, mental, and moral health. So Central Park was the first manifestation of that. We have Golden Gate Park in the same movement. There's actually even a bigger plan, kind of like the boulevards of Paris for San Francisco. This is Daniel Burnham did this plan for San Francisco, but the plans were scrapped in the earthquake, so we don't have these huge diagonal boulevards like you do in Washington, D.C. Another thing that came out of this movement was the first suburbs. These are railroad suburbs. This is Riverside, Illinois. These are the first true suburbs that are truly separated from the city. They're completely residential. The only business happens right near the railroad station, kind of in the little cute central town. And this is kind of a pattern that we have a lot of times without the railroad today, but a pattern that we have for our suburbs now. Hillsborough, California was another example of a railroad suburb. And then there were streetcar suburbs as well. And these were additions to the city, not exactly suburbs. They were added on to the edges of the city. So there was kind of like a pattern for how streetcar oriented development worked. And you can see it in the grid today. This is a picture. This is an old map of Oakland, but you can see in the right at 14th Street where all the diagonal lines come off. That's where the original city ended, and the streetcar lines branched out after going down Broadway, I think it is. So San Pablo, Telegraph, and Broadway all branch off there at 14th Street because that's where downtown ended. The formula is streetcar development 101. First, you buy property next to the city, and you put a grid on it, and you build a streetcar line down it, and you operate the streetcar usually at a loss. And then you build an amusement park at the end so that people will use the streetcar on weekends and they'll actually ride the whole way instead of just riding to where they live. You sell all the land, make a bunch of money, and then you close the amusement park and buy more land. That picture is, I think that's Idora Park, which is the one that was kind of on the streetcar line from Oakland. And there was one in San Francisco called Playland at the beach, out by Ocean Beach. Streetcars also shaped the way that our streets look. The contrast is a little bad, but this This design guide says that street and roadway widths should not be established arbitrarily. So we have streetcars and car lanes, and it talks about the proper widths for both the roadway and the street so that you have proper space for sidewalks. Bicycles were the first affordable transportation. This was a huge, huge technological innovation. You could now go anywhere. Once you had a bike, you could go really far for free, and that was a big change in mobility and personal mobility. It even liberated women. It's a famous quote by Susan B. Anthony saying that bicycling has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. And the final thing was the Good Roads campaign. This is where streets in the US first became paved. And it was actually bicycling, not driving, that kind of drove that, that movement towards asphalt. And in this case, motorists were actually a really small minority, but they kind of piggybacked on the movement. And that's where streets really became a domain. You know, cars were kind of like then given all this road space that was originally made for bicycles and people. In the first slide, we saw that, you know, it was much more diverse activity on the street. So Act 2, the oil era. This is going to be kind of another mix between all four of those classes. This happened. We had lots of cars. We liked the cars, personal comfort. And we started creating urban freeways to get around better. We thought that the Le Corbusier model of cities was great. You could, you know, drive in your personal car everywhere. But the reality was that these urban freeways segregated neighborhoods, they bred crime. In San Francisco, this is the ferry building behind there. It cut off the waterfront from the rest of the city. And they're just ugly. This is supposed to be a park. This is when the park was still in construction, but you can't imagine that this kind of environment has much meaning to somebody when you have, you know, so much concrete around. Another landscape architecture thing is the movement towards suburbs and office parks. And this is how, you know, our taste for the automobile was manifested in our kind of urban environment. This is so there used to be a railway on the Bay Bridge. You could get from Chico, you could get to Chico from downtown San Francisco. And this, you know, trains ran from downtown Berkeley. And once we decided to build BART, they took it out and converted it to all car use. But I think BART saves less than 5 minutes from the original travel time from downtown Berkeley into the city. In airport design, we have, you can see here that cars are actually a really huge consideration because they're a big source of profit for airports. This is the yellow is all the infrastructure in the airport that's devoted to cars. That's you know, car access and also parking in the kind of circular area. The blue highlight is the public transportation options. There are buses too, but that's the dedicated area for that. This is a little bit technical. This is Bryce's paradox. Adding capacity to a roadway doesn't necessarily increase your performance. Sometimes leads to worse performance. And in that same vein, induced demand also can affect. So when you build more lanes on a freeway, you can actually get equivalent or worse traffic than you had before because more people drive on that freeway. So this led to the Freeway Revolt. San Francisco was a big leader in this after the Embarcadero Freeway was built. You can see the red freeways were built, so you have 280, 480, and 101 kind of down towards the south, and both approaches to the bridges. But there were a bunch of freeways through the rest of the city that were avoided. This second crossing, number 17 there, was also avoided because we converted the Bay Bridge to 2 decks of cars. So there were even some crazy plans for like building another crossing from Marin across the top of Tiburon with a toll plaza on top of Angel Island and then coming straight into the city. It would have been really ridiculous looking. But this is what we still have in our cities. This is Folsom in San Francisco, I think around 10th Street or something. We still have 4-lane, one-way roads in cities that are designed like our highways, and they're scary. When you bike along this road, it is really scary. The street is now completely made for cars. you know, when you grow up, you learn that you stay on the sidewalk and you'll probably get killed if you're in the street. And Soma has the most traffic deaths in San Francisco because of this, because of all the kind of urban highways like this. So this kind of love affair for the car has also been manifested in our city environment, in our streets. So this is going to be a little bit different. The human-centered design part is going to talk more about the techniques than about history or something. So this is where we realize that it's about people. I'll start with some of my own work. I designed an application called iBart for iPhone, a transit application. This is our newest one for New York called Ride New York City, Ride NYC. So this is kind of an example of like a user interface for transit in a way. Transit companies do this innovative thing, or transit systems do this innovative thing. They make data available, and we can use that data and create applications. They save money because they don't have to make them, and there's a competitive market for who can make the best one. So it's pretty much a win-win situation. It's pretty good. Sometimes, you know, you have some problems with reliability in the data and stuff, but the techniques that this was kind of a redesign of the application that we did over the past summer. And we used user scenarios, we did brainstorming, we did a lot of, you know, iterative visual design and stuff. These are all, you know, things we learned in ME 110. Here is a more tangible user interface for transit or for mobility. This is a bike share system, one of the first famous ones in Lyon, France. So you have the interaction both with the kiosk system, but also with the bike. The bike has to fit everybody. That's also a kind of body-conscious design principle. Details in transit. Another example from Lyon. On the right is the tramway. If you look, this area right here is actually made for perching instead of sitting down, because, you know, if you're only going one stop or something, or it's crowded, you can just kind of like lean. This is an example from Portland, the triple handrail, so that you don't all have to crowd at the same height and touch each other's hands, you know, and also the bike space. So it's it's an innovative way at looking at some of the kind of like old transportation solutions. So this is interesting too, because the example in Lyon, like, it encourages you to do, you know, maybe to stand instead of sit, and, you know, certain positions are more healthy. So we learn how designing a chair or a space to accommodate different positions can kind of encourage you to you know, keep your posture better and stuff.
In the creation of things. Here's one example. This is a train which goes from London to Paris. The question was given to a bunch of engineers about 15 years ago: how do we make the journey to Paris better? And they came up with a very good engineering solution, which was to spend £6 billion building completely new tracks from London to the coast and knocking about 40 minutes off a 3.5-hour journey time. Now, call me Mr. Picky, I'm just an ad man, but it strikes me as a slightly unimaginative way of improving a train journey merely to make it shorter. Now, what is the hedonic opportunity cost of spending £6 billion on a load of railway tracks? Here's my naive advertising man's suggestion. What you should in fact do is employ all of the world's top male and female supermodels, pay them to walk the length of the train handing out free Chateau Petrus for the entire duration of the journey. Now, you'll still have about £3 billion left in change, and people will ask for the trains to be slowed down.
So it's an interesting bit of kind of creative reframing, and, you know, maybe it's a little non-realistic for, you know, today's world, but it's interesting because it really starts reframing the problem. So if you look at reframing how people get around, this is Portland's bicycle network. They built 300 miles of bicycle network for the cost of 1 mile of 4-lane urban freeway, $60 million or something. And now they have the highest bicycle mode share in the US. This is another way of reframing how public space should be. This is Herald Square in New York City. They closed off parts of Broadway and turned it over to pedestrian space. And now there's a nice place to sit down, relax. There are chairs. They're not even chained up or anything. They're just chairs that are sitting there. I'm surprised they don't get stolen. There's bike lanes, and the traffic actually flows a little bit better because it's, you know, they reduce the space for cars so there's like less conflict going on. San Francisco is also doing this. These are parklets on Divisadero and Powell Street. They take away parking, disincentivizing cars or driving or parking, and you know, turn the space over to people again. So the street is kind of becoming more of a domain for all people, not just people in cars. Pavement to Parks is a similar program. They take kind of like unused parts of intersections or, you know, kind of the end of a street that's unused, and they'll turn it into a park. What I like about this is that it truly allows you to prototype an urban space, and prototyping is a, you know, very important part of the design process, and being able to do this with pretty minimal investment. They, you know, this is a trial plaza, and then they can really see through quantitative and qualitative, you know, contextual inquiry and other studies, and see like how people actually feel about the space and how it's actually working. They've done this with bike lanes in Brooklyn, and they can see how traffic flow changes. And even further, you can take off all the signs and directional markings and kind of, you know, the hierarchy between sidewalks and street, and you have something called naked streets, which is just kind of starting to come back, and the street actually becomes safer because cars have to, you know, they have to be really careful. They slow down a lot, and they, you know, they're looking around and making eye contact with everybody. Everybody on the street has to make eye contact. So we can learn from how our transportation infrastructure used to be on the left, how San Francisco used to be, and now how it is on the right. And we can, you know, see what parts worked, what parts didn't, and hopefully can make better decisions about how we change the built environment in the future. We can also innovate and, you know, prototype and find, this isn't to say that you won't have large infrastructure projects in the future, but at least for some of them you can prototype and really make sure that you're going down the right path. Involve people in the process more than just the planning stage at the very beginning where you present two alternatives and then you, you know, analyze them in a closed room. Thank you.